How many of us have built a company or are still building a company, a project, or a solution, or anything that you're working on? By show of hands. Come on. That's great. Looks like lots of us are in the business of making and breaking things, which is awesome. So what I want to say is that building a successful company, project, or program always starts with dreaming big. 6 years ago, a couple of friends and I saw an opportunity to tackle a challenge that we're all familiar with, and that is malaria. Having all of us on the team had different episodes of the disease, and having witnessed the challenges within our own healthcare system when it comes to the quick and accurate diagnosis of the disease, we set off to build a company that is aimed at closing the gap between these communities that where we come from and their rightful access to healthcare. This is actually what happens when you visit a tier 1 clinic within the sub-Saharan region. You find one doctor working on over 20 patients, waiting in long lines, and some with their children crying, just for a simple malaria test. Actually, that simple malaria diagnosis takes about 30 minutes. That is from the time blood is drawn from the patient till when conclusive results are obtained by use of a microscope, and a little bit shorter to 15 minutes if you're using the strips. This process is tedious to both the doctors and the patients. To the doctors, because they get to wait and work long hours in the labs trying to prepare the solutions and trying to look into that microscope so that they can give the patients the results that they've come to get. To the patient, because they get to wait these long hours in these lines and reduce their times of productivity. So allow me go into some scientific bit to bore some of you a little bit. So actually, when a person is affected with malaria, the plasmodium affects the chemical and physical compositions of this cell. So what the team and I looked at was using the principles of light scattering and magnetism to try and map out the differences between the normal and uninfected red blood cell. And with this, we offered Matibabu, a kit that is 15 times faster than the way we do traditional diagnosis, but also collecting data in real time and aggregating this data onto a dashboard that third parties can access and then make informed decisions when working on developing vector control programs at a country level or a region level. So this has been our journey. 6 years ago, we started off with that first prototype. And the main objective of this prototype was actually to see if we could pick off results when we use light and get anything out of all this scientific study. So when we went and tested this, we realized, yes, we can pick off some values, but we didn't know anything about the values we were picking. So we said, probably we are having a lot of interference from the external settings from the lab. And right here, we are just all trying to be geeky, a bunch of computer scientists that were trying to see that we use our skills to see that we make a difference. So we moved into the second prototype. And the main objective of this second prototype, still in the lab, was to see that we align and cut off these external interferences and see that we can be able to do diagnosis with this. The most interesting part of this, all this failed. When we went to test this, none of these were giving conclusive results. So, but we kept on pushing, went back to the drawing board, and then tried to do things differently. This time around, we said, let us re-engineer a pulse oximeter. Some of us that have been to a hospital, we know a pulse oximeter. The simple clip you put on your finger, and then be able to know your oxygen levels and heartbeat. So we decided to re-engineer this, and the main assumptions we're holding here were when a person has malaria, this affects their oxygen levels. And the other big assumption that we had was we have seen a great shift in the medications available for malaria, but we haven't seen any shift in the way we do diagnosis. So after doing this, we went out in the field to do a needs finding survey. And we did this need finding survey in one of the districts in Uganda where I come from that has a high prevalence of malaria, that is Apache district. So when we went into Apache, The most interesting point of this was seeing a mother bringing in a kid to do a diagnosis in our small room. And when this mother came in to do this diagnosis, the child had a high fever. So when this mother came in, we told her about the importance of this technology and then did the diagnosis. But the kid was malaria negative. So since the kid had a high temperature, the mother was not contented. What she did was move out of this small clinic and go to the next door to access another doctor just to have their blood drawn. This changed the way we were looking at things. We started understanding that we are not only trying to develop technology, but we are also trying to counter the way people think, the way people perceive technology, because most times what happens is we develop technologies, very fancy technologies, and we end up not using these technologies in the communities. So we found out that we have to not only develop a usable technology, but also offer a technology that people can consume in the communities, and then create the change that we are looking at creating. So we went back, this had an efficacy of about 60%. So we went back on the drawing board and put together an array of parameters using the principles of light scattering and magnetism to see that we get to these fourth generation prototypes. And this is around our 4th year of business. So yeah, lots of time trying to develop and break things. So when we went back here, we started creating 2 use cases for these technologies. So we had a use case that enables a doctor still do the diagnosis in their setting, whereby they draw blood, put the blood in a cuvette, and within 2 minutes put the cuvette in this kit and can be able to know what the results are. But also have a patient that is willing put their finger inside here and carry out a diagnosis. Like I said, all these results are meant to be sent to a dashboard that is aggregating these and making reports, quarterly reports that are sent to third parties to make sure they make informed decisions. So we made it a little bit faster and still went into the 5th generation that is currently going to do clinical trials in Uganda and also doing clinical trials in Angola. So what I want all of us to take home is keep dreaming and keep pursuing all those small dreams that you have. Thank you very much.